Hello everybody and welcome back for another video. Today we're going to be talking about the demolition crew with a focus on San Francisco. Now when you start looking into San Francisco, there's a lot of interesting structures, including this place called Sutro Baths, which has been talked about by a lot of people, but it's just one of many. And when you start looking into San Francisco in the early 1850s, you see kind of what you would expect to see as far as development, sparse populations, relatively simple structures, things sort of line up. But as you move a little further into the timeline, for instance, 1866, this amusement park opened, and it was actually more than an amusement park. It was a conservatory, a museum, a zoo, had an aquarium, and all of this in 1866. And we're told there was another fire in San Francisco in 1851, another great fire that destroyed 3/4 of the city. So you're talking about people in this fledgling city that are just trying to make it, right? They're trying to survive. And 15 years after this great fire, where 3/4 of the city is destroyed, they're building this Moorishly inspired, amusement park slash museum slash everything else. It seems a little bit off, but you could definitely push back against that. But where I think things start to fall apart as far as the official narrative is concerned is when you start looking into things like this panorama that was taken in 1878 by Edward Maybridge, and I think it consists of 13 photographs, but there's just buildings, these structures as far as the eye can see, thousands upon thousands of structures, including a lot of beautiful churches with impressive spires, multi-storied structures. We're dealing with brick and stone structures as well. It's not just simple wooden structures. I mean, look at these churches and just all of these different buildings, thousands upon thousands. And again, 1851, 3/4 of the city's destroyed. And 27 years later, you have all of this. And again, I just find it questionable. And I think a lot of these structures were already in place. But again, that's just a view. That's my view. So I wanted to dig a bit deeper into some of these churches, and I came across this church called St. John's. And the interesting thing about this church is that it actually survives the earthquake. What destroys it is dynamite. It was people intentionally destroying buildings to create a fire break that would hopefully slow down the fire. So I definitely wanted to do a little more digging into that, and I came across a really good article, which I will leave a link to, talking about the dynamite disaster that was associated with San Francisco earthquake of 1906. And I just taken some excerpts from the article, but it just goes on to mention how authorities decided as a last resort to use dynamite to blow up a lot of these buildings to create a fire break that would hopefully save the rest of the city. But it turned out to be one of the biggest mistakes in San Francisco history. Imagine that. So yeah, the city used explosives in an attempt to clear a path, but apparently the crews were untrained, so it actually helped spread the fire. So it just turned out to be this giant disaster. And I can't help thinking that this whole notion of blowing up buildings to create fire breaks, the real intention is to actually destroy buildings, not to save the rest of the city. It's a means of the controllers to destroy our history. But again, that's just my view. But again, we go on to read that the soldiers and firefighters, so the army was brought in, the soldiers and firefighters kept falling back and setting off explosions as they went, trying to make these fire breaks that would slow down the fire, but it wasn't working for them. And the next day, the fire and the dynamiting continued. And when you just look at the sheer numbers of the destruction, we had 522 city blocks utterly destroyed, 4 square miles, almost 2,600 acres, 28,000 buildings utterly destroyed. And like I said, I think this whole notion of intentionally dynamiting buildings to slow down the fire is a cover story. I'm sure it's a successful technique in certain situations, but I think the idea here is there was too many buildings that were already in place Again, that's my view. And the actual plan was just to destroy as many of these structures in an attempt to hide our history. That's my view. And there was a particular general, General Funston, Brigadier General. He just mentions how there was just so much dynamiting that was happening. There were times when the explosions were so continuous as to resemble a bombardment. So just the amount of dynamiting that was going on, it apparently resembled a bombardment. And that's interesting because the U.S. Navy was on site as well. And again, they were brought in as a humanitarian effort, right? And I have no doubt a lot of people were being, ferried away, but I believe there were a few destroyers in the complement of ships that was on site. Again, I can't say what really happened, but it's just something to note. Now, when I went looking for other great fires, you do come across this plan of dynamiting buildings to try and slow down these fires. And that goes for the Great Baltimore Fire of 1904, where the leveling of the buildings by dynamite was a desperate attempt to arrest or stop the spread of the fire. And again, Great Fire Baltimore, more than 1,500 buildings were completely leveled. So we're told, again, it's a plan to try and help, but I think what's actually happening is a deliberate attempt to destroy these buildings. And another interesting component of this is in San Francisco, there was this veteran fire chief, Dennis Sullivan, and apparently he was the man with the plan, and he had knowledge about how to carry out this plan of dynamiting these buildings to stop the fire. But he died near the beginning of the earthquake. He died, so nobody knew how to implement the plan. So firefighters and military personnel were just randomly blowing up buildings. So that we're told it was just this massive chaos and confusion, all because this one person, he died unfortunately in the earthquake. So when you go to Baltimore, I believe their fire chief, Chief Horton, within an hour of arriving at the scene of the Great Fire, he was a falling electrical wire hit him apparently and knocked him out of commission the duration of the fire. So because he wasn't there, his replacement was brought in who wasn't as experienced. So he called for these intentional dynamiting, these fire breaks to be established, and it didn't really work. But again, the same MO, this person with the plan, all the experience, they're knocked out of commission and you get just chaos. But I think the plan all along is behind the scenes. It's to destroy all these structures. And I wanted to take a look at the Great Fire of Chicago, 1871, where you had a ton of buildings destroyed. And we're talking, again, stone, brick structures, 17,000+. And when you start looking into Chicago, the military was there again, this Lieutenant General Philip Sheridan. When you start looking into him, came across an interesting article talking about how he saved Chicago not only once, but 3 times. But this is great. In reference to the Great Fire of Chicago in 1871, as that inferno grew, Sheridan, he raced around blowing up buildings in the fire's path. But it gets better. Simultaneously, he had to battle for more dynamite with others who had the same idea. So a bunch of people just decided they needed to start dynamiting buildings. Again, I'm sure that this is a strategy that can be used successfully, but I think what's happening here is the intentional destruction of structures, of buildings, under the guise of helping. That's my view. And when you look at this General Philip Sheridan, apparently he has a complicated history, which you can read here in this article, but he has his memoirs are published in a book, and he's in this interesting pose with the hidden hand that we see a lot. So it doesn't make me feel too good about his presence in the Great Fire of Chicago in 1871. And again, there's just a long history of cities destroying beautiful architecture, and I think it is an agenda. Again, that's my view. That's just an opinion, but I think that's what's happening here. And I thought it was just really interesting, this whole notion of just intentionally dynamiting all these buildings. So I thought this was pretty interesting, and I just wanted to share this with you guys. But I think that's all I have to say on this. So let me get on to a video recommendation. Now, I saw this video a few years ago and I just thought it was really good. And if you're someone who's interested in alternative history, then I think you'll probably like this video. And I believe it's only gotten a little over 5,500 views, so I think a lot of you would appreciate it. Now, I can't speak to the rest of the videos on this channel, but I would like to highlight this specific video. And I don't think that this channel is still active even. I think his last video upload was over or close to 2 years ago. So I can't speak to that, but as far as this video, really good, talking about this star fort in northern Manitoba in Canada. And it's just really interesting because I'm talking remote, far in the north of Manitoba, and this town in Manitoba where this star fort is called Churchill, and it's considered the polar bear capital of the world. So yeah, very remote. And in previous videos I've touched upon how we might have had a different climate in our past, and a lot of structures that we're being told are from the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s might indeed be significantly older than that. So this video touches on that, I believe, a little bit as well. And I think it's just a little over 13 minutes long. So worth a watch. I'll leave a link in the comments. And I think that's all I have with regards to that. Now I just wanted to give another thanks to my patrons, and as well as I got some new patrons. Thank you very much, much appreciated. And thanks to all of you again. And I think that's all I have for you today. So until next time, take care. Bye.